them online before I dial up. How they came and they on top and I'm a mile up. How them online before I dial up. How they came and they on top and I'm a mile up. I know the wall's closing in, but don't you dare give up now. Poe believed in me, pull up through some bucks down. Todd told the valet pull the truck round. Push the line up that we drew it, it's just us now. Would you believe me if I told you my granny told me she prayed this? Then booked the surgery just to pull me out of the basement. Right back where I started, nothing to show for a facelift. Got pushed playing Walter White and Davis, never felt so dangerous. The type of power they can't quantify. And name the best from my region, you gotta utter mine. Think of who really putting on, you never come to mind. Rapping like your Spotify, tap you rappers compromise. Yeah, no need to panic, just paint the canvas. If you can feel the static, you're too close, find your balance. Embed the revolution for their prohibition bandwidth. Blood trickle from the leaders he was planning. I had them all online before I dial up. How they came and they on top and I'm a mile up. I had them all online before I dial up. How they came and they on top and I'm a mile up. Boy, that flight to Amsterdam. Well, my accountant of minus my family found out too and didn't like it. You're not in the salon with Dale said and I thought he was biased. Then I got a Venmo that said copy the finest. Before my foolishness settled in, recorded a whole tape before we got to Berlin. This close to giving up but now never again. Don't overlook the work and come expecting to win. In the end, my word, never put nothing over the squad. Got it right up under their nose and fight a facade. Off the cliff with broken wings, I'm aware of the odds. Enough faith for us all, I'm the one for the job. Most days, catching sun rays, baby, look like the front page. Overthinking what they might say, have it your way. Yeah, the biggest threat is something they never seen. Dial it up, patch me into the screen. I had them all online before I dial up. How they came and they on top and I'm a mile up. I had them all online before I dial up. How they came and they on top and I'm a mile up.
What's going on, people? This is Jackie Luqman, and you are in Luqman Nation, the most dangerous show on social media, on the most dangerous network on social media. That's Black Power Media. I'm Jackie Luqman, as I said. Welcome you all. Let me know if the audio and the video is good. I hope you really dig the new intro screens. I worked really hard on them, and I really wanted to do a nice tribute to my honey and the work that we have done together that I'll continue to do. So what's up, y'all? Happy Friday. And let's get the housekeeping stuff out of the way. Welcome to Black Power Media. If you have not seen Black Power Media before, if this is your first foray into Black Power Media, I encourage you to join Black Power Media. Click the join button right there underneath the video on the YouTube screen. You can also subscribe to Black Power Media and click the notification button, the little bell, so you can get notified whenever any of us go live on the platform. We have so many great content, so much great content, so many great shows, so many great content providers. You do not want to miss all of the content that we have on Black Power Media. You can also support Black Power Media on Patreon at patreon.com/Black Power Media. We appreciate your support. And if you notice in the chat, if you feel so inclined, you can always join while you're in the chat, and you can throw up a sticky, put some money in the tip jar, as Ear Doctor likes to say, to support Black Power Media. We need to support independent, radical Black media, and that is what Black Power Media is. So let's get into this, y'all, because this is I have to admit, this was interesting, because I wasn't going to do this show on bell hooks. I was actually going to do this show on marriage advice and how I think it's an emotional racket and it doesn't actually serve us well, us meaning, Africans, Black folks, in a capitalist society, in which our people especially are subjected to traumas that wound us so deeply that we really have a difficult time loving ourselves, let alone somebody else, until we really deal with the hurt that most of us don't even know we live with, the trauma that we have. And we can talk about that later if you want, because I still am kind of legit mad about that whole marriage advice thing. But I had to change the show at the last minute because obviously Bell Hooks died. And when I heard that, I immediately thought of her critique of Beyonce's Lemonade. And I know that makes no sense right now, hearing that she passed away and immediately thinking about that. But hear me out, because I remembered that critique because something she pointed out in that critique was about self-love and self-esteem, particularly for Black women, that reminded me then of her book that I read, All About Love, New Visions. So I had to go back and read that critique again. And I'm actually glad I did. Before I go any further, I have to give this disclaimer because I have to tell people that look here, I don't like Beyonce. All right. So I always give people this disclaimer. I just think it's fair to do. And my dislike of Beyonce actually has nothing to do with her talent. She is an incredibly talented singer and performer, also incredibly talented at marketing. And we can talk about why I don't like Beyonce later, if you want, or what it was that turned me off to Beyonce, because, it's not like, I always disliked her, not really, but there was something that really did turn me off to her. And we can talk about that later on if you want to too. But I think that Bell Hooks' critique of Lemonade was important. Not because, I dislike Beyonce and I was so glad that, somebody finally coming out against Beyonce, because that's really not what she did. But because the points that Bell Hooks made in the ideas that she was conveying about the Lemonade Project, or the ideas that the Lemonade Project were conveying, I thought were very, very important in the critique of pop culture in general, and Black entertainment and what it means for us and how we live specifically. And I thought that she made some great points about how dangerous the kind of messaging that I saw in Lemonade, that I was like, okay, so nobody else is seeing this, that I thought were really dangerous for I think Black women in particular, but especially for Black folks who just love themselves some Queen Bey. So I always like to give that disclaimer when I talk about Beyonce in any context, because I don't want people to go back and find some video, saying, see, we can't even take her seriously because she ain't even like Beyonce. I told you that I don't like Beyonce. So there you go. All right. So the critique that I am that I'm talking about, that Bell Hooks wrote, is from 2016, I think. And let me pop it up on the screen here for you, because I'm going to share it with you a little bit as we go along. And this was actually published in The Guardian, a UK paper. It's very interesting. And Jared Ball made this point on the Remix Morning Show earlier this week, that this criticism, because Bell Hooks had already said that, Oprah Winfrey was sucking the dick of corporate media or something like that, which, is true. She really was. Oprah Winfrey took, remember when she started out, all her shows were about Black people and Black issues and that kind of thing, and not all, and then all of a sudden there are all these issues that she's covering that really don't impact the lives of Black people. So it was very clear that Oprah Winfrey was not addressing Black folks' issues on her show anymore. Her platform, she allowed her platform and herself to be co-opted by capitalist corporate media. And Bell Hooks said it, saying that, you know, Oprah Winfrey is sucking the dick of corporate media or capitalism or something like that. And I was like, yeah, she is. So after she said that, like, it's not like Bell Hooks got a lot of attention in mainstream media in the US, certainly in the first place, you know. But I think after that criticism of Oprah, people were like, well, you know, screw her. So it's interesting that this critique of Beyonce was published in the UK, because certainly no US publication was going to print a critique of Lemonade when it came out, because everybody was falling over themselves, fawning over Lemonade. And as the US media does, not being critical at all about the content in it. And I think Bell Hooks did an excellent job. You know, not to say not like she needed my approval, but I think the points she made about some of the themes in Lemonade are so important that I'm glad it didn't come out in U.S. corporate media, because I feel like they would have had some disparaging things to say about Bell Hooks in the process of publishing it, to disparage or discredit her, because that's how corporate media in the U.S. does. And all right, not like UK media doesn't, but okay, here's let's get to the point. So this is from 2016, and it is in the Guardian newspaper. And as you can see, the title reads, Beyonce's Lemonade is capitalist money making at its best. And let me tell you something, people lost their minds. And I mean, the beehive came after Bell Hooks when this came out, and there were all kinds of crappy little think pieces about how Bell Hooks, was the devil, and how dare she criticize Beyonce, and blah, 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 on and on and on. But I think the first part of this critique, this essay, that stood out to me was when Hooks said, let me go down here and find it. I hope I think I did highlight it. Now, let's be clear. Bell Hooks really did give Beyonce, all of the laudatory compliments for the visual display, the aesthetic of the project, the affirmation of all different types of female bodies, Black women's bodies, and all that kind of stuff, clothed, unclothed. That was great. She absolutely gave her credit for that. But she absolutely did criticize these issues of how the Black female image doesn't really do anything, that the Black female image that is celebrated in Lemonade in many ways, and in all kinds of good ways, for the affirmation of different kinds of Black women, our different bodies and all that kind of stuff. It really didn't challenge sexist constructs of Black female identity. So her main point, and maybe I didn't highlight it, but what she said in this piece, the first thing that struck me was that Bell Hooks said, and I'm quoting here, contrary to misguided notions of gender equality, women do not and will not seize power and create self-love and self-esteem through violent acts. Female violence is no more liberatory than male violence. And when violence is made to look sexy and eroticized, as in the Lemonade sexy dress street scene, it does not serve to undercut the prevailing cultural sentiment that it is acceptable to use violence to reinforce domination. especially in relations between men and women. Violence does not create positive change. Now, in that quote, Bell Hooks is referencing the scene in the Lemonade video for Hold Up, the song Hold Up, which is a terrible song, by the way, I think. But the song, and you can find the video on YouTube. Just, Google Beyonce's Hold Up. It's right up there. I'm not going to share it because I don't want to get into copyright trouble with YouTube. But in the video, Beyonce takes a baseball bat to a bunch of random cars as she's walking down the street in this very nice, frilly, floofy dress and lovely and all that kind of stuff. And she's, destroying a bunch of, busting in the windows of a bunch of cars and other things and busting out store windows. And she's doing it. Remember, Lemonade is this project that is kind of centered around the infidelity of her husband and her feelings about that, but the betrayal and the hurt and that kind of stuff. So it's like the glamorized car smashing, stuff smashing scene with the baseball bat is actually like an expression of Beyonce dealing with her hurt and rage at being betrayed and lied to by Jay-Z and his infidelity. And that is what Hooks is critiquing as false representation of female empowerment in that essay, in that quote. Because like when she says in the essay that, quote, women do not and will not seize power and create self-love and self-esteem through violent acts, to me, Bell Hooks is literally saying that we women will not feel better about ourselves by fucking up the dude or the dude shit who made us feel bad about ourselves, right? Or who physically hurt us. And I thought about how often I've been around sisters whose answer to a man who did them wrong is in a relationship was to either physically attack him or to destroy his property to teach him a lesson, right? And we'd sit around and laugh and, oh, I know that's right, girl, each other about how empowering doing these things felt, because maybe we had felt so powerless in this relationship, and maybe that man made us feel powerless in that relationship. But I think Hooks is asking us to ask ourselves, what do we get from that act of violence that improves us in any way? That's how I took this essay. And when I read it again, I feel like that feeling was reinforced. And I remember thinking, like, when I read this essay, when it came out, and like arguing with people about the themes in this particular video that really bothered me, I remember asking people things like, okay, but if you are in a relationship with a dude who cheated on you and you keyed his car, and I actually know somebody who did that, I said, I would say, look, did keying his car make the hurt that you felt at his infidelity go away? Like, I remember the scene in the movie. We all remember the scene in the movie, Waiting to Exhale, which is not one of my favorite movies, where Angela Bassett sets fire to her soon-to-be ex-husband's clothes. And I think, she puts the clothes in his car, pours gasoline or some accelerant in the car, sets fire to the whole shit, and she walks away, very empowered. And oh my God, Black women were celebrating that stuff. And he cheated on her with a white girl and, left her with, pretty much not a whole lot after she helped this man build the wealth that they had. And, he did her wrong. But then I remember like asking people about that scene and about this video that Beyonce did when it came out. Like, did burning that man's clothes make the pain of his betrayal diminish? You know what I mean? And when I think about the ways that some women, and I've known a couple of women who have done this, who have taken their anger at brothers who have broken up with them, not, their relationship hasn't worked out, but they've had a child. How I have known some women who have taken those dudes to court to punish them with child support. Not that these dudes didn't want to pay, not that they didn't want to help take care of their children. They were ready and willing to take care of their children. But some of these women were so pissed off at these men and so hurt by whatever it was that they were like, well, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to make you pay. I'm going to take you to court and sick child support on you. And I asked, a couple of women, do you think that women who do that, and don't act like you don't know women who do that, who they know that the men they subject to the court system cannot afford the kind of child support that the courts impose, do you think that like unbreaks these women's hearts after the breakup? I mean, and of course, in the case of physical abuse, yeah, I still believe Bell Hooks is asking us as women, especially Black women, to look at what we need to actually heal from the hurt, the emotional hurt, the betrayal, the physical hurt, the trauma of the misuse and some of the abuse that we suffer, some of us suffer at the hands of some Black men, and to pursue those things, the healing, right? Rather than expanding the emotional violence by carrying out acts of violent rage. And I mean, look, I'm not at all saying that anger and rage at infidelity and betrayal and physical abuse is certainly not warranted. And I am not at all talking about self-defense. That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about, like, I guess what we can call vengeance violence. I guess that's what I'm going to call it. Because I feel like Bell Hooks is saying in this essay about Beyonce's video, Hold Up, that it might feel good, this vengeance violence, to take out this physical violence on a person or, to destroy the property of someone who hurt us. It might physically, emotionally feel good, but at the end of it, when we're done with it, are we good? Right? Are we better? Are we made better? Has our emotional well-being been improved? Has our spiritual well-being been improved? And James, I don't know. That's a good question. I will admit that I haven't read every single Bell Hooks book. There are 40 of them. There's no way I would have read, but I don't know if she is religious or not. But I don't think religious is even a part of the discussion that I think is important here, because I think what I'm seeing, or what I saw in the critique of Lemonade and Hold Up, the video Hold Up in particular, is that, and I think I know where you're going, that it's not like a turn the other cheek kind of thing. It's not like a take the high road and be a better person type of thing. It's not like pray and let God handle it type of thing. I take it as, what are we going to spend our time, those of us who have been traumatized and hurt by personal actions, what are we going to take our time focusing on? And if we're going to spend all of our time, or a good deal of our time, focusing on pursuing the vengeful violence in whatever form that takes to make us feel good emotionally, and I don't even know if that we feel good emotionally for a few minutes or hours, does that change the way we feel about ourselves because of what was done to us? I hope I'm kind of getting to the crux of what I think Bell Hooks was saying in this essay, but because that's how I took it. So I think that's what Bell Hooks was asking us to ask ourselves as we watched Beyonce's fictional baseball bat tirade. All right. So, and okay, let me just say as an aside, um, this scene in this What's Up video is also kind of problematic to me, since, and I don't think this was not in Bell Hooks's critique, but this is just, my personal observation of the thing. Beyonce is a woman who's literally like making other people pay for her husband's transgressions. Right? When you think about it, whose cars are those that she smashed up in the video? Why is she smashing somebody else's store window? What the fire hydrant do to her? I mean, I guess at the end she had to smash the camera because, evidence, right? But understand, she isn't doing this because she's mad at the system that's oppressing her community. She's mad because her man cheated on her. And I'm not diminishing that. I'm just putting in context why she was doing all of this, committing all of this, very highly stylized, beautiful destruction. So I never could quite figure out why the hell people were celebrating a rich ass Black woman smashing up other Black people's stuff because she's in a Black neighborhood because she mad at her man. I'm sorry, but it can't be just me. It could not have been just me that would just looked at that video and were like, I don't think those are any of Jay-Z's cars that she's smashing up. I don't think that she's not like smashing up anything of his. That's just weird to me. And I know, like, people think, because people have said this to me, oh my God, who holds Beyonce to that highest standard? Like, it's just music, or it's just video, or it's just art. But here's the thing. Clearly, her fans do hold Beyonce to a standard even higher than I think what we're talking about today and what Bell Hooks was talking about in 2016, because they descended on Bell Hooks like a swarm after that critique was published. And like I said, there are all these think pieces defending Beyonce and trashing Bell Hooks that came out afterward, blah, blah, blah. Honestly, just like they did when Bell Hooks said in, I think, interview she did with the New School, and I can't remember when that was, but Hooks said that there were certain aspects of Beyonce as an artist, as an entertainer, as a performer, that to her were like a terrorist, and I wanna explain what Bell Hooks meant, because people intentionally, well, I won't say intentionally, people reflexively said that Bell Hooks called Beyonce a terrorist, and that's not what she said. And she was speaking about Beyonce's image, the imagery in her art, the way she presents herself as, the epitome of European beauty standards, the long blonde hair, that kind of thing. That lends to making young Black girls who look up to her feel inadequate about themselves, and who are in turn like internalizing this unrealistic and completely false and oppressive idea of European beauty standards, which are, firmly entrenched in white supremacist patriarchy, right? So the conversation was that the New School that she did, the interview that she did with the New School, and that's on YouTube too. You can look that up, Bell Hooks, New School, Beyonce terrorist, and see the whole conversation and get the context. But the people didn't pay any attention to the context. People were just like, oh my gosh, she said something bad about Beyonce, she must pay. So the entire context of protecting the self-esteem and validating the identity of Black girls and women from this kind of capitalist, white supremacist, European focused standard of beauty was completely missed by these people. And you know that on this network and on this show, we contend that music and movies and all entertainment is not just what it's presented. It represents something, right? An ideology or a narrative that holds a lot of influence over, people who consume it. And without the proper political education to decipher those messages, people get all kinds of wild ideas about how we're supposed to be, what we're supposed to think about ourselves, and what we're supposed to do, how we're supposed to respond, to life. So I feel like Bell Hooks was giving that political education about how Beyonce's video, the Lemonade Project, in particular, the video for Hold Up, is a capitalist, faux feminist propaganda piece that actually conveys the idea that, as she said in the piece, that violence is made to look sexy and eroticized. So it doesn't serve to undercut the prevailing cultural sentiment that it's acceptable to use violence to reinforce domination, especially in relations between men and women. So I feel like she's saying that, we women say that we hate violence for men, and we do. And we say we hate violent men. But why do we express our hurt and pain that comes from that violence, not with seeking healing for ourselves, but with more violence, right? And that's celebrated. And we see how it's celebrated in various aspects of media, not just from Beyonce, not just from Black entertainers. And then, that turns us into violent women in a way, right? And again, I'm not talking about self-defense. You know I'm not. I'm talking about what I clearly explained a few minutes ago and what I think Bell Hooks is pointing out in her critique. And, this vengeance violence that Bell Hooks was pointing out is not actually liberatory, because what it does is it serves to uphold the imperialist, white supremacist, capitalist patriarchy. And she specifically described this system in those specific terms together: imperialist, white supremacist, capitalist, patriarchal hegemony. And it serves to do that by making violence sexy, because it's, Beyonce or whatever, or whatever popular woman is doing it. So violence based on vengeance becomes acceptable to women. It becomes chic even, right? But nobody is actually healed from the acts that compelled us to feel a certain way, that we felt like we had to do these things. And because nobody's healed, the violence is, of course, perpetrated over and over again, because behavior hasn't changed. And not only am I talking about the behavior of women, I'm not indicting the behavior of women here, and neither was Bell Hooks. But we're talking about the behavior through healing of men and women in this dynamic, in relationships that go wrong, go bad for whatever reason. Because I think Hooks goes on to further note in that essay that the system that creates the violence in the first place is never interrogated or confronted in this, fabulous, highly stylized display of, supposed female liberatory empowerment with, Beyonce and the baseball bat and all this foolishness. And she says that, quote, Beyonce uses her non-fictional voice and persona to claim feminism, but her construction of feminism cannot be trusted. Why? Because her vision of feminism does not call for an end to patriarchal domination. It's all about insisting on equal rights for men and women. And in the context of this What's Up video, or Hold Up video rather, in particular, the equal rights for men and women is the equal right to be violent. And just let me add that those white women country and rock anthems and white women vigilante movies that have cropped up before Beyonce's Lemonade came out and have cropped up afterward. Those movies really have us thinking that violence is how we're going to liberate ourselves from violent men. I think they do. And I think this is the point again that Bell Hooks was trying to make. So this is also why I point to entertainment being a dangerous tool. And I think this is the point Bell Hooks was making, that entertainment is a dangerous tool of imperialist, white supremacist, capitalist patriarchy, because rather than addressing the social structures that don't exist, they don't exist in this country to provide women adequate safety from violent men, doesn't provide violent men with any restorative justice outlets to help them no longer be violent and be better persons themselves. And in general, this society doesn't have an underpinning that provides validation or stability or health for all people, all of us, to realize the best parts of ourselves without being sidetracked by the traumas of oppression and exploitation from that system. I mean, the problem is with this entertainment, these revenge, these female revenge fantasy songs and movies and videos, is that what we get from them is that the answer that we're told by Hollywood and music and marketing is to literally beat people into submission. And that's kind of fucked up to me, because that's exactly what the system has done to us, and especially us anti-imperialists. That's the very thing that we are fighting against this country in the West to keep them from doing to other countries, beating them into submission with bombs and drones and war. Right? Exactly. Exactly, Goddess Crew. I'm so glad that you brought up that song, Before He Cheats. I hate that song. I hate that song so much. Because look, can we be real, y'all? Whoever, what's her name is, who wrote that song and performs that song, Before He Cheats, 9 times out of 10, because she's a little white girl, she probably ain't gonna get locked up by the cops. You and me, hell yeah, we going to jail. We going to jail if we keep, come on. All right, so and I want to point out something in this, something else in this critique that I remembered was very important to read then, and I think is even more important now, as we're having these conversations about misogyny, misandry, which is a real thing and is destructive, and the idea of, can the oppressed be oppressors and all this kind of stuff. Hooks actually addressed that in the very same critique of Beyonce's work, when she said, I'm quoting again, in the world of fantasy feminism, I love that she called this fantasy feminism, there are no class, sex, and race hierarchies that break down simplified categories of women and men, no call to challenge and change systems of domination, no emphasis on intersectionality. In such a simplified worldview, women gaining the freedom to be like men can be seen as powerful. But it is a false construction of power, as so many men, especially Black men, do not possess actual power. And indeed, it is clear that Black male cruelty and violence toward Black women is a direct outcome of patriarchal exploitation and oppression. That is literally in the essay. And before I forget, let me drop this link to the essay in the chat for you, because if I keep going and not do it right now, I'll forget. So there you go. It's in the chat for you, so you can access it. So look, I know that Bell Hooks has been soundly criticized for being too critical about Black male violence toward Black women. But I think she made clear in a lot of her scholarship that the violence of the oppressed toward each other is a result of that oppression from the imperialist, white supremacist, capitalist, patriarchal hegemony, right? And she just said that in her essay. But let me be clear right now. It is absolutely true, I think, that Bell Hooks had made comments that have seemed to be very combative, if not downright misandrous toward Black men. And I think the comment that I remember the most, that had me like thinking twice about a few things in regard to her and her approach to how she talked about this issue, was from her 1999 book, Yearning, Race, Gender, and Cultural Politics. And in this book, Bell Hooks writes this. Excuse me. Oh, so sorry. She says, quote, "No one can truly believe that the young Black males involved in the Central Park incident were not engaged in a suicidal ritual enactment of a dangerous masculinity that will ultimately threaten their lives, their well-being. If one reads again Michael Dyson's piece, The Plight of Black Men, focusing especially on the part where he describes the reason many young Black men form gangs, and she quotes him saying the sense of absolute belonging and unsurpassed love, it is easy to understand why young Black males are despairing and nihilistic. And it is rather naive to think that if they do not value their own lives, they will value the lives of others. Sorry, let me read that again. And it is rather naive to think that if they do not value their own lives, they will value the lives of others. Is it really so difficult for folks to see the connection between the constant pornographic glorification of male violence against women that is represented, enacted, and condoned daily in the culture, and the Central Park crime? That is from Bell Hooks' book from 1999, Yearning, Race, Gender, and Cultural Politics, reading directly from the book. Now, I'm not going to bother with Michael Eric Dyson's work, because why do that to ourselves? I'm not going to do that to you. But I think the point Hooks was trying to make is one we generally make when we talk about where violence in our communities come from or why it happens. And we know that is the result of the external oppressions from the system and the ways that that oppression has transmogrified the way we see ourselves and each other as worthless and expendable, as unlovable sometimes, right? But here's where I think the problem was, and I think it's kind of obvious. Her monumental error here was to automatically assume the guilt of those boys. And at the time she wrote this, they were boys. And I have honestly asked myself for, over the years, if Hooks making this statement about those boys if she didn't automatically assume that those kids were guilty because she, like the rest of us, still struggle with that notion of, scary Black maleness and, the unchecked and dangerous sexual prowess that we know this system claims is characteristic of all Black men. So that's why the system has to treat all Black men the way they do. But we still have to disabuse ourselves of that narrative, and that was she still kind of suffering from some of that? I've asked myself. I wondered. Was it the fact that the victim was a wealthy white woman that caused bell hooks to automatically believe that these boys were guilty, and that these, kids were, poor Black kids from, Black and Latinx communities, working class and poor folks, who ostensibly had like an ideological axe to grind, right, with their lives full of struggle, presumably, and saw this white woman blithely jogging alone through, Central Park at night as like this convenient target of their rage. Like, was it a class thing? Or, I wondered what it was that led her to automatically believe that the NYPD of all police departments could be trusted in the confession that they got from some of these kids. I have honestly like asked myself these questions about bell hooks when this book came out, and I read it. And I read the book because of the furor over the things like this that she said in the book. And I'll honestly tell you, I'll be honest, I've never actually finished the book because I couldn't get too far past that point in the book. And I mean, honestly, that's where my maturity level was at the time. I've gotten better, so I'll probably go back and read the rest of the book. But I admit that this response from bell hooks, I think was one of the things certainly that made me more careful in what I said about Black men when we're having these discussions about intracommunal, intra-relationship violence. And it certainly caused me to be more understanding when I went back and thought about it, about why some Black men felt like bell hooks was like a misandrist and just straight up hated Black men. I do think, though, that she has been consistent in pointing out the intersectionality and the oppressions, or the intersectionality of the oppressions of these separate entities, seemingly separate entities of imperialism and white supremacy and capitalism and patriarchy on both women and men, especially, Black women and Black men. But I'm not going to sit here and act like, she has not put her foot in her mouth a few times in ways that came off all wrong. And this was one of those ways that came off all wrong. And I get, that some people have a real problem with bell hooks because of some of these things that she has said in this way. But I think that's the point, right? In having honest intellectual discourse, which is what I think bell hooks was doing in that critique of Lemonade that she wrote. She was having, I think, an honest, she was conveying honest intellectual discourse. But she was also conveying the idea that nobody should ever be above valid and principled critique, even including bell hooks, right? So I think that for me, what really resonated about this critique, and why I tell people that if they really don't know much about bell hooks and they haven't read a lot about her, to start with that critique. Because the critique wasn't really about Beyonce. It really wasn't. It was about trauma. Specifically, for me, it was about the idea that Black women really, what we really need to realize self-love and healthy self-esteem and true liberation is not the faux feminist, capitalist-driven, patriarchy sustaining iconography that is presented in, by the Hold Up video in particular, and by this like vengeance, violence, faux feminist entertainment in general. But what we really, really need is healing from the trauma we have experienced, and not just Black women, but Black men too. Because Hooks writes in the critique that honoring the self, loving our bodies, is an appropriate stage in the construction of healthy self-esteem. She says this aspect of Lemonade is affirming. Certainly, to witness Miss Hattie, the 90-year-old grandmother of Jay-Z, give her personal testimony that she has survived by taking the lemons life handed her and making lemonade is awesome. It's and it is. It's powerful. All the references to honoring our ancestors, what Bell Hooks is saying, and elders in Lemonade it inspires. She said that about it, and it's true. That is some amazing visual affirming of our ancestors, and you know what it was beautiful. It was beautiful to see, and it was beautifully done. However, Bell Hooks says, concluding this narrative, this very beautiful and affirming narrative of hurt and betrayal, that is a part of Lemonade, with caring images of family and home, do not serve as adequate ways to reconcile and heal trauma. She goes on to say that in this fictive world, Black female emotional pain can be exposed and revealed. It can be given voice. This is a vital and essential stage of freedom struggle. Good part of the Lemonade Project. But she says it does not bring exploitation and domination to an end. No matter how hard women in relationships with patriarchal men work for change, forgive, and reconcile, men must do the work of inner and outer transformation if emotional violence against Black females is to end. We see no hint of this in Lemonade. Bell Hooks writes, if change is not mutual, then Black female emotional hurt can be voiced, which is a good thing, but the reality of men inflicting emotional pain will continue. And she goes on to say, it is only as Black women and all women resist patriarchal romanticization of domination in relationships can a healthy self-love emerge that allows every Black female and all females to refuse to be a victim. Ultimately, Lemonade glamorizes a world of gendered cultural paradox and contradiction. It does not resolve. Now, again, I mean, I know that people, you know, read Bell Hooks' critique or heard about it, because I'm convinced a lot of people didn't actually read it. They may have read her critique and just couldn't get past the fact that she said unlaudatory things about Beyonce, which, I mean, she actually didn't. She was talking about, you know, but I think that when we talk about love in our communities among Black people, particularly romantic love in relationships, and this is what resonated me with her book All About Love, New Visions, that, you know, me and Abdus just really dug, because the idea that romantic love, as we understand it, is so steeped in this weird medieval European, very white supremacist, extremely patriarchal framework. Should cause us to relearn, and then I shouldn't have said relearn in the title. What I should have said, I think, was reassess, and revise our ideas about the construct of romantic relationships and what we individually need to enter into those relationships so that they can be healthy. I think the thing that was so important about much of Bell Hooks's work, at least for me, as someone who struggled for most of my life and for a lot of my adult life with self-esteem, with self-love, not being able to love myself, being in emotionally abusive relationships, being dismissed and disparaged by people who supposedly cared about me, but didn't care about how I felt or what I thought, and didn't validate me as a whole person until that dude, Abdul-Shahid Lukman, came along, and I felt what it was like to be validated and loved exactly as who I am and all of my whatever this is. I think I realized that the thing that I appreciated the most about Bell Hooks and most of her scholarship and her intellectual analysis has been centered around how we don't deal with trauma individually and how that shows up in our relationships with each other. And that was really important to me because I don't think I understood how much the trauma that I experienced personally impacted the way I saw myself and the way I responded to other people until I started going to therapy and I started unpacking some of those things that were done to me, that I experienced, and that I didn't even realize I internalized. And I can say that for Abdus, we were just getting to the point where he was willing to do the same thing, because you know how brothers be sometimes. And I think we're all very stubborn in that regard, that we don't want to open we don't want to open the closet door with the skeletons in it, because it's scary as hell. It's scary. And we don't want to, we call it rehashing old wounds, or reopening old wounds. But the thing is, the wounds aren't old. The wounds are not old because we keep relying on the pain from those wounds that were inflicted upon us to inform how we relate to each other, certainly in romantic relationships, and not just between men and women, but in all romantic relationships. But I know that we rely on that the wounds, the pain from the wounds that were inflicted upon us, to inform whether we love ourselves or not and how we do it. So for me, Bell Hooks's book, All About Love, was like one of the most important of hers that I read. Even given some of her, more problematic um, statements in the way she talked about violence and Black men. But All About Love really kind of helped me on the path toward understanding this concept of love as a revolutionary act. And not just romantic love as a revolutionary act, but loving me, loving Jacqueline as a revolutionary act. Because everything else in this world has told me that because I am dark skinned, because I had short hair, because I had short hair, because I am plus sized, or fluffy, as I like to call myself, or Rubenesque, as I also like to call myself, because I am not a representation of the Eurocentric standard of beauty, that I am unlovable, because I am opinionated. I'm not demure and quiet. I'm an introvert, but once y'all get to know me, y'all know how I do. I'm not the patriarchal standard of what a woman should be, and I never have been. But because I believed the imperialist, white supremacist, capitalist, patriarchal indoctrination about what a woman should be. And because everybody around me believed the same thing, because we're all indoctrinated by the same system, and none of us have been healed from the trauma that we have been subjected to in that system, we just keep heaping this abuse on each other. And we wonder why we can't get our relationships right. We wonder why we're not happy with ourselves. We wonder why we're always so, especially Black women, especially women, but particularly Black women, we're so critical of ourselves. We never like anything about ourselves. We're the first to believe that, everything bad about us, everything's bad somebody says about us is true. It must be our fault, whatever it is. That we don't deserve to be loved, that we can't have standards, that we should accept whatever and whomever comes, because after all, who's going to love us, right? And for Black men, it's the exact same thing. I think it's the same thing. It just manifests itself in a different way, but it's not something I think I am qualified to express, because I'm not a Black man and I can't tell you how Black men feel, but they can, and I suggest we listen. This was the beauty, I think, of my marriage to Abdu Shahid, because he helped me listen to Black men and how they feel, and what this same oppression from this system that Bell Hooks so I think perfectly describes in the way she describes it. We understand how it affects us, but we, meaning Black women, but we don't want to hear how it affects Black men. Because we also believe, because the system tells our to, that Black men are our problem and not the system that oppresses both Black men and Black women. And honestly, being married to Abdu Shahid Lukman really helped me get to that next step in, like, okay, this is not an oppression Olympics type of thing. Which one of us, Black men or Black women, are oppressed and harmed the most? This thing about love and trauma among Black people and in relationships is all about how we all need healing. That's what I think I took away from a lot of Bell Hooks's work that I've read, and particularly this essay, this critique about Lemonade. I really do think Bell Hooks was trying to challenge Black women and all women not to buy into this imperialist, white supremacist, capitalist, patriarchal idea about what love and self-esteem and empowerment and freedom looks like and feels like for us. That's very often presented in these very intentionally and well curated images in entertainment of female empowerment that we consume and cheer on. So that's why I suggested that people start with this essay. And I hope that after this little chat that you come away with a view of her and her scholarship, I think, that sheds some light onto what I think is her importance in the struggle that we have before us. Because while I absolutely agree that there is a place and a need for revolutionary violence, I absolutely do believe that's true. I ain't got no problem with that. I think when we're talking about relationships between us Africans and radicals and revolutionary people and comrades, violence is not going to get us the liberation from violent people in our midst that we want and that we need and that we deserve. The only thing that's going to liberate all of us from that is healing from the trauma that this system has imposed upon all of us. That's what I take largely from that essay that Bell Hooks wrote about Lemonade, and from her work in general. So, let's see. Let me go over here in the chat. because I intentionally, when I do these shows live, I'm going to try very hard to intentionally not pay attention to the chat as I'm doing the show. Because I get sidetracked because y'all are great. Y'all have be having whole side conversations, and it's amazing, and I love it. So let me go up really quick and see what folks are saying. James Thompson said, I'm not a romantic. I mean, I think that's okay. I am. And I have to tell you that I was blessed to meet Abda Shahid the way I did, regardless of how it turned out. And that's, a whole nother discussion for another day. But I think that we have one of the most romantic love stories I had ever heard. I could not believe it happened to me, and I think this goes into Franny French's comment here. Love is such a great teacher. Meeting Abda Shahid really and falling in love with him and marrying him and being his wife for 8 years really taught me quite a bit, quite a lot. And I'm forever grateful for that. And I will always treasure, aside from the fact that, I loved him and he was sexy and funny and all that kind of good stuff. And he was my bear. But Franny, you're absolutely right. Love is a great teacher. But we have to go into it willing to love and be loved, and to learn and be healed from some of the things that, and let me make a quick note about healing and stuff like that. I try to be careful about saying, we all need therapy. Well, yeah, we all do need therapy, but in this capitalist system, we all can't afford therapy. So that is also, I think, another reason for us to focus on destroying this system so that we could all get the healing that we deserve. Because it's not Black men that are keeping us from getting therapy. And it's not Black women who are keeping us from getting therapy. It's this capitalist, white supremacist, imperialist, capitalist, white supremacist, patriarchal system that's keeping us from accessing the therapy that would lead us to the healing that we need. So yeah. Let's see. Let me see. Let's go down. Let me see what else I can see here. Exactly, Franny. Yeah, have to find a good therapist, and that's the other thing. All therapists aren't equal. All therapists are not good for Black people. All therapists cannot adequately help Black people and oppressed people deal with these traumas. So even if we have access to therapy, we might have to go through a few of them before we get to someone who really understands our condition and struggle and can really help us get to the point that we need to be to love ourselves and all that kind of thing. Let's see. Let me... Oh, Goddess, this is a great comment. We're all susceptible to low quality information, and we have all fallen into a trick bag before. I think that's absolutely true. And I think that was very true of Bell Hook's comments about the Central Park Five. I mean, let's not act like we were all right on the right side of history about that incident when it happened. Not everybody was. There were plenty of Black folks who were like, firmly on the side of the state and believing that those boys, now men, and now exonerated, did it. So she wasn't the only one who believed that they were guilty. And Goddess, this is also a great point. And I'm glad you said this, because I need to point out that after that book was published in 1999, it was Bell Hooks had it re-released a couple of times, and I think that comment was still in there, which is very problematic, considering that they were exonerated. So yeah, and I don't know whether she ever repudiated that or expounded on that or whatever, but that is that's a good comment. Thank you for that. Let's see, launcher. So this is an interesting comment, and I think it's a good one. I don't think there's a problem of not hearing Black men. If we give Black men passes every day, all day, that wouldn't change any of the consequences of how they feel deal with this oppression. Here's the thing, launcher, and thank you for your comment. I don't think what we're saying here is that we give Black men passes every day and all day. And I also know that we actually don't give Black men passes every day and all day. I think we're kind of hard on brothers sometimes when they don't deserve it. When they, like the whole child support thing as an example, as I think an example. And I am not one, and I'm just using this as an example, but I think it's a valid one. Because I'm not going to sit here and say that there are some men, there are not some Black men who, you know, absolutely are deadbeats and are skipping out on supporting their children. That's, yes. So child support is needed in some way for those dudes. But I think too many Black women give the child support system too much credit for being fair and equitable to Black men, and not, and we don't admit that the child support system is a part of this white supremacist patriarchal oppressive structure, and also that there are plenty of Black women, way too many, who do in fact use the system to punish Black men, to the point where Black men who are working class and poor, who don't make a lot of money, can't live. I mean, literally, after child support is taken out of their paycheck, what do they have to live on? So you have Black men, more Black men that need to be, who are facing homelessness, who are in situations that they don't want to be because they don't have anywhere else to go that they can afford. And that leads to a whole bunch of other things. And I see in this, again, this is just as an example, I don't see enough interrogation. Again, I think this is the point Bell Hooks was making, of the system. As much as I see people saying that those kids need to be taken care of and Black men ain't shit, so we need child support to take care of those. You know, understand what I'm saying? I don't think anybody gives Black men passes all day, every day. I think there is not enough interrogation into the kinds of things that Bell Hooks raised about how the system oppresses Black men and how that does manifest in some ways, in some behavior. But I also don't think there's a whole lot of interrogation into how the system does oppress Black men. And I absolutely don't think, I could be wrong, but this, from where I sit, from what I see, we don't listen to Black men when they do try to express how the system oppresses them and how it makes them feel enough. I think that what we're not talking about giving Black men passes all day and every day. And I do think that we don't listen enough, but I also think it's true that, you know, Black men don't listen enough to Black women. This is why the dynamic of mutual healing, what Bell Hooks said about mutual healing from the collective trauma that we all endure, is important. It's not about giving anybody a pass about anything. So thanks for the comment though, but I hope I cleared that up a bit. Let's see. David, I have no idea what your contributions to the chat were because I wasn't paying any attention, but I know you can be naughty sometimes. So, but that's okay. Because we love our family, we love our comrades, and we know, David, that sometimes you just get carried away with the puns, but that's all right. All right, let's see. Another great point by Goddess. Black women aren't snatching the mic from Black men, but there is a demand to stop having the mic coming from certain men who feel they aren't allowed to speak. There is, I think, like I said, I try to be unbiased and objective, because this is, I don't want to act as if this is an easy situation to address and unpack and deal with. It's not. If it were, we would have done it already. If you feel me, it's like diets. If they work, people still wouldn't be dying. So this is not a simple, easy. This isn't there's not a one answer. No. It's not that. This is very hard work. There are instances where, especially in movement spaces, especially in radical spaces, where Black men do like to kind of dominate the conversation. And somebody like me, I don't take too well to that. And I've noticed that. And some other people have noticed that. So there is an effort to have a more egalitarian movement space, I guess, for lack of a better term. But I think Goddess, you're right. We're not running up snatching a mic from Black men, but we women really don't. I think we're tired of having men dominate the conversation in movement spaces, in particular. I think, and we're also there. There are also some of those men who are always saying, who are using. It's almost like there are some of these men who talk all the time, who have an enormous platform, who people listen to all the time, but they're the very ones who are like, nobody listens to us. No, now those kind of things is like, no, everybody is listening to you, and that's kind of part of the problem. But it's a touchy, complex, not easy situation to handle. It's a balancing act. And if it were easy, we would have had this figured out already. All right. So look, y'all, I really appreciate you hanging out with me this evening. And I hope I hope a lot. I really do hope that I was clear and see, I was thinking about Umar Johnson, but I didn't want to say his name. Thank you, Allie Wayne, for saying his name. So problematic for so very many reasons. But yeah, I really hope that this was helpful to some people, and that you got an insight into why I think that bell hooks is important, even as some of her takes have been a little problematic and messy. But ultimately, I think what I hope that you take away from this show tonight is that if we are going to do this revolution thing, if we're really going to do it, we have to look at love as a revolutionary act, and not just romantic love, and then not even just comradely love. But I think we have to start with looking at self-love as a revolutionary act. And I think bell hooks really helped me do that. And actually, I think it was my therapist who told me to read all about love. Yeah, now that I remember, like the first couple of sessions I had with my therapist, my first therapist, who was a Black woman who's younger than me, she said, "Have you read bell hooks all about love?" And I was like, "No." And she said, "Well, do you know who bell hooks is?" I was like, "Of course I know who she is." And then she said, "Well, I want you to read all about love. And then in the next couple of sessions, I want you to tell me what you think, and we'll talk about it. And we'll talk about it in the context of you loving yourself." So I hope that's what you got out of this chat tonight. And I really appreciate you hanging out with me. Thanks a lot for joining me here in Luke Mon Nation, the most dangerous show on social media, on the most dangerous network on social media, Black Power Media. Share this video. Subscribe to Black Power Media. Follow us on Facebook. We are on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter, Black Power Media, Black Power Media 1. the number one. You can follow Luke Mon Nation on Twitter also, Luke Mon Nation, the number one. Support us on Patreon, patreon.com Black Power Media, or patreon.com Luke Mon Nation. So thanks a lot. Have a great weekend, you all. And as always, be very, very good to yourselves and each other. Take care. Peace, love, and revolution. Good night. And they are out here throwing up the peace sign like they won something. Yep. I don't understand what they think they want.
I need to revise. I did see white people this happy. I gave the example and the Allies' defeat over Nazi Germany. But I haven't seen this many white people happy. There was a couple periods in history. One was when Nutella was introduced. And I mean, I haven't seen that many white people happy since Nutella was introduced and marketed and stuff. Because white people love Nutella.
They booked the surgery just to pull me out of the basement. Right back where I started, nothing to show for a facelift. Got pushed playing Walter White and Davis, never felt so dangerous. The type of power they can't quantify. And name the best from my region, you gotta utter mine. Think of who really putting on, you never come to mind. Rapping like your Spotify tap, you rappers compromise. Yeah, no need to panic, just paint the canvas. If you can feel the static, you're too close, find your balance. Embed the revolution for their prohibition bandwidth. Blood trickle from the leaders he was planning. I had them all online before I dial up. How they claiming they on top when I'm a mile up. I had them all online before I dial up. How they claiming they on top when I'm a mile up. Boarded that flight to Amsterdam. When my accountant and minus my family found out too and didn't like it. You're not in this alone. What Dale said and I thought he was biased. Then I got a Venmo that said copy the finest. Before my foolishness settled in. Recorded a whole tape before we got to Berlin. This close to giving up and now never again. Don't overlook the work and come expecting to win. In the end, my word never put nothing over the squad. Got it right up under their nose and gentrified the facade. Off the cliff with broken wings, I'm aware of the odds. Enough faith for us all, I'm the one for the job. Most days, catching sun rays, baby, look like the front page. Overthinking what they might say, have it your way. Yeah, the biggest threat is something they never seen. Dial it up, patch me into the screen. I had them all online before I dial up. How they claiming they on top and I'm a mile up. I had them all online before I dial up. How they claiming they on top and I'm a mile up.